everyone, and welcome to our first webinar on 3D commerce. This is hopefully the first in our series of workshops, and we're super excited to have Cynthia joining us and Matteo for the discussion, which will follow after my brief intro. So let me just get my presentation organized. Okay, perfect. So you will meet Matteo and Cynthia shortly, and you have already heard us chatting. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Katharina Pesch, and I head up Invrsion North America. We're leaders in 3D digitization and retail simulations. So before we have our riveting discussion, and we hope that that'll be around 20 minutes, I just wanted to do a quick intro and talk about some of the latest developments around 3D digitization that we've been making at Invrsion, and that should take about 10 minutes. And we hope that you can stay on the call for a Q&A too, so feel free to submit your questions, and we will go through them and see what makes most sense to ask based on the dialogue that Matteo and Cynthia have been having. If you have any feedback, we would love to hear it. If you would love to participate in one of the next webinars, we want to hear from you. So just email us on invrsion@invrsion.com, or any of us if you know us personally, we'd love to hear from you. So before we dive into more detail, why are we talking about 3D commerce now? And really, I just wanted to set some context, and it's about the fact that consumers are now demanding really the highest quality in every step of the shopping experience, online and offline. Consumers should be in control of their shopping experience and have the power to shop how they would like, both having the choice and convenience that they desire. If you've thought about it or analyzed it, shopping hasn't changed so much in the last 20 years, and we really need to catch up. But we also don't live in a narrowband world anymore, and 5G is upon us. Cisco's recent annual internet report said that 5G will support more than 10% of the world's mobile connections by 2023, and 5G will enable a 13 times faster connection than mobile currently does. So with an increase in the experience, our consumers will increase their expectations of how we will interact with the digital world, and especially in the commerce side of things. So we all of us need to be prepared and need to think about what that future looks like. So who's Invrsion? Very, very quick. I'm not going to dwell on this for too long. Our ambition is really to elevate the retail revolution from an omnichannel approach to an omni-experience approach. We mean that the brand experience should be an integral part of the customer journey, and it should be immersive in its experience. So going from this 2D world to this 3D revolution isn't always simple, and that is where some of Invrsion's capabilities come in. And we will hear from Cynthia what she is doing at Walmart on her side of the globe on that. So we approach this 3D revolution from the creation of digital twins. And you can see here a digital twin of a Fendi bag, and I'll talk about that shortly. The other part of our business, we also create immersive shopping experiences that you can digitize stores in virtual reality. But we'll not venture into that area too much today and focus on the 3D digital twins. Now, the next evolution of e-commerce, we say, is obviously 3D commerce. And I wanted to give you some context of what 3D commerce is. So let me play this video. Sorry, just moving on the screen here while I share with you the meaning of 3D commerce in our world. So 3D commerce is driven by digital renders, so the digital twins that you see popping up here in the video. And it's combined with really an optimized performance for enabling viewability across sites, applications, devices. These 3D renders allow you to move the object around, zoom in super smoothly, and you can see amazing quality. You can examine the stitches of the bag here, for example. So you can see that our digital twins are hyper realistic. And consumers should be able to shop in that kind of, with that kind of brand experience. So let me move past the video quickly. So before I go into the creation of a digital twin, I just wanted to show you, one in action. So here you see the Bali bag, and I have loaded this onto in Sketchfab, which is the real-time rendered engine in which we can show these 3D objects, 3D digital twins. And you can see here, I'm zooming into the Bali bag. You can see the stitches, you can see the texture, you can see the zipper, and it's hyper realistic in its appearance and look and feel. And why can't we be looking at every object that we look at online in this fashion? And we believe that is the direction that we're all heading. So moving on from that. So you see this beautiful bag, but there is quite a complex layered process involved in creating these bags. And without going too technical, and I know there's some technical folks on this call, but we are trying to, but that is one of you or a few of you, and there's also people from the other side of the spectrum who are just trying to get a glimpse into what 3D commerce actually is and means. So trying to find a good middle ground here. But there are different 3D acquisition techniques to creating these models, from photogrammetry to scanning to 3D modeling. And once you have gone through the acquisition piece, that results in a digital mesh, which is the middle image that you can see here of the product. There we focus on the geometry of the objects, and we clean up the topology. So you can see these polygons here, and we make sure that the shape is optimized to be rendered. But before that happens, we need to add the texture. So adding texture and lighting onto the object, and then the final render is produced at 90 frames per second. So that is what allows you to manipulate and move the object around, as I just showed you. Another example, many of our clients and a number of you on this call come from the CPG world. So I've pulled up a Barilla tomato pasta sauce. You might know that we are Milan headquartered, so I'm keeping a theme here. We were founded in 2015 in Milan, actually, and that is where our headquarters. So here you can see the Barilla tomato sauce, and I'm moving it around live as we speak with my mouse. You can zoom in, you can see the label, you can see exactly what's on there. So it's hyper realistic, and you know what you're buying, basically. All right, let me move back to the presentation. Sorry, just something got in the way here. Okay. So I've shown you a lot of the, you've seen the quality, and we talked a little bit about the format of the digital twins, and the consumer, the benefit for the consumer, I think, is pretty clear, that it is by far a more human interaction than looking at pictures. It gives consumers greater power, more access to data, and allowing the consumer to make smarter decisions. But simultaneously, I guess the one point I wanted to make here is that the performance to enable all this is key too. So technically, we have to, as an organization creating digital twins, compress the product, enabling it to load quickly and to be optimized for mass adoption. And that is something that we are hoping to see in the coming months and years, is that scalability. The same way as adhering to industry-wide file formats that have been agreed by a consortium called the Kronos Group, and Cynthia is going to talk about that shortly too. That is super important to facilitate the scaling of 3D digital twins. So given all this, what is the ROI for manufacturers and retailers, and why should you embrace 3D as a pipeline within your organization? So there are many stats and facts in the industry, and we are trying to gather them. So if you have anything you want to share results, we would love to hear them and happy to then publish them to our audiences too. But we recently completed a study with 800 people in partnership with the University of Bologna, looking at 2D versus 3D engagement on site. So we weren't looking at conversion, we were just looking at engagement. And there, the results were that, there's a higher likelihood of purchase for those looking at 3D objects versus 2D, and that the attitude towards the retailer changed by over 115% on the likability side. Sketchfab, where I showed you the platform I showed you the Bali bag on, has stats around increasing time on site by tenfold. Kronos has shared stats around reducing product returns by 35%, driving engagement by 66%. And then the really golden nugget is the 40% increased conversions. We're seeing lots of data around conversions. There's a piece by Shopify where they've seen up to 94% increase in conversions. At Invrsion, we're actually working on an A/B test where we want to test this with a retailer in the US. And so if you are interested in participating and being that partner to do the A/B test, then let us know, because we would love to work with you and then share obviously the data with the wider world. And the proof is in the pudding, obviously. So I mentioned Kronos a few times, and I just wanted to, and I think we have a few Kronos members on this call for sure, and we will be hosting more and more speakers from the Kronos consortium too. But Kronos is a nonprofit member-based organization of 150 plus leaders from the industry, and it's working on interoperability standards for 3D, augmented, and virtual reality. One of the focus areas is around 3D commerce, and we are associate members of the 3D commerce group, where we are working on standardizing activities that allow for the ubiquity of 3D commerce. One of the most recent developments, and that's the last bit I'm going to talk about before handing over to you guys, is the 3D commerce certificate program that Kronos and its members in the 3D commerce group have worked on, which ensures that whichever device you look at, you encounter 3D products, the look should be consistent, the loading time should be optimized, and increasing the performance for viewability. And so that is an exciting next step that we've taken. You can see here some of the really great players that are part of this group, from Amazon to Google to IKEA, Wayfair, Target. They're all part of the Kronos group. So why is this 3D commerce standard so important? I want to show you 3 quick examples of the differences of a digital twin. So the first one you will see here is a Nike Air Jordan that we've created using photogrammetry as the acquisition technique. It's a 64 megabyte file. It takes 8 seconds to load, and it's, I think you can see it here. Let me just remove this. It doesn't have a perfect texture, but it is pretty autonomous in its creation because of the photogrammetry acquisition technique we did. And then it's rendered in real time on Sketchfab. Now, if you move to we want to show you kind of our beautiful shoe, which is the most optimal, or not optimal, but this is kind of the most beautiful shoe we have created. This is even bigger in size. It's 88 megs. It has a very clean mesh and topography. You can zoom in, you can see the stitching of the shoe. Let me zoom out, sorry. I wanted to show you really quickly also just the wireframe map. So you can see it's very cleanly designed on the topography front. So that's beautiful and fantastic, and you might want to host that on your website, but you can't have 300 of these on your e-commerce site when it's taking, the loading time is 7 seconds. And this shows kind of the need for these 3D commerce standards. So what we've been able to do is create a third version, where we actually apply the latest 3D commerce standards. So this is compliant with them. And we've managed to reduce the file size from 88 megs to 5 megs. And this loads within 2 seconds. And we're hosting this on actually Babylon Player, which on our own website, featuring on our own website. So here again, we haven't compromised on the quality of the digital twin. What you can't do compared to the last one is you can't hyper zoom, but everything else has, we maintain the quality of this experience. And that is super exciting to be able to show that to you. Okay, if you have any questions about this, also feel free to type them in and then we can answer them. I'm skipping through some of the technical detail on the mesh and formats just because of time, and I want Cynthia and Matteo to speak most. So last but not least, really the scalability. So this isn't ubiquitous. 3D commerce isn't ubiquitous yet. And how do we enable the scalability, and is it possible? Of course, at Invrsion, we wouldn't have a business if we didn't believe it was. And we are working on an automated methodology to create these digital twins. So it's a combination of a machine that automates the shooting part with AI that helps recognize the object that is being shot. And then there's still a partly manual process involved where 3D artists help optimize the objects before they are rendered in real time. But this allows us to scale the production of these to hopefully over 1,000 a day. And our partners can have a version of this machine within their offices or within their headquarters or shooting studios. But we'll take another webinar to focus on this more once our beta phase has been completed too. So on that note, talking about scalability, some of you guys probably haven't even heard of Invrsion, but you will have heard of Walmart. So I wanted to introduce you to Cynthia and really hand over to Cynthia and Matteo for our discussion. And I will leave this on the background and over to you guys.
Thank you, Katharina, and thank you, Cynthia, which is the Italian way to say Cynthia.
Oh, I know.
So thank you to be here. We are honored to have the head of CGI here with us at our first webinar. And so my first question is about your role. So what do you do as head of CGI in Walmart? And the second question will be about what you did with Kronos from the early beginning of this 3D commerce open standard. So if you can tell us.
Yeah, thank you for the stimulating Friday morning activity. I appreciate it. I'm enjoying being here. Okay, so my role at Walmart is to look after the creative teams and the technical teams that are creating these digital twins and then assembling them in the beautiful scenes like the one behind me. And there's a distinction I always like to make because head of CGI, well, Walmart is really big and we have some incredibly innovative teams that do work for the associates and do work for product development, and they are experts in 3D and building products. And I would never pretend to have any influence over what they do, although they are my close partners. But I look after what's really consumer facing. But this 3D, this digital twin pipeline is important though, because it's a focus I have, because I do want to enable whatever teams around the company would benefit from having digital twins. I would like them to have a singular place to request and to retrieve these digital twins. So I have, a couple different arms of the same motivation. And then, yeah, Kronos. So I think it was actually 3 years ago, almost exactly, I was contacted by Glenn Roth from Google with this really interesting proposition, which was to come together for the day with other retailers in our space to develop open standards. And it was a treat for me because there are probably no other time where I could, on purpose and not by accident, be sitting at a table with some amazing people who, I mean, they don't just do my role, they do amazing things and so we had representatives on the retailer side from, and I might forget one, but IKEA, Lowe's, Williams-Sonoma Incorporated, Target, and of course, Wayfair. And then we also had, there were 50 of us, and then we also had publishers in the room like Shopify. And then we had software companies like Autodesk and like Unity. Unity was there to represent. And then just we started the day with a mission statement. And just as a matter of like what drives us to participate in a day like that is all of us have lived through consumer experiences as consumers over the years that were really frustrating and almost embarrassing from the internal side, which is, you know, by the way, I love Flash. Okay, this is not against Flash as a technology, but you know, you start to do Flash and then all around the web, you get that annoying warning that you don't have the player installed. And that was just heartbreaking, right? And then you have instances where you used to have to choose between Keynote or PowerPoint. One might say you just don't want either one, but we have to do these presentations at work. And it used to be, you had to choose one or the other. And there was this dissonance in my world where I worked in creative teams. We always had Macs, but many of our clients had PC. So there was just this inoperability that happened on the side of users. And we really genuinely don't ever want that to happen again. And the way you avoid that is to just come together openly with the same goal, which is to be on the consumer side, and talk about what are the standards going to be? How do we create, how do we tell our suppliers or our creative teams, this is the file format that we are going to say works across all, the web is that general term, all devices that serve up digital content to the consumer. And we were all really excited to do that. You know, in loose terms, we were saying, let's create the JPEG of 3D models or the PNG, you know, this portable thing. So the main interest of people in the room really was this real time, like Katharina was presenting, but it also goes toward just simply the file itself, because we create digital twins for all kinds of reasons. And so it was a really wonderful day. And then, so we had our mission statement, and then we actually were working on, well, what's our name, which of course is always really important. What's your project name? And we went through a couple of them and ended up settling just for the moment on TRIO, which stands for all kinds of different things. And then of course, it morphed into the 3D Commerce Working Group. So there was a moment in time in that room where we were decided, okay, there's going to be a technical track, who's going to write these specs, and then what are the comms plan and other things. So everyone had a role to play. I'm not a technologist, so although I didn't join the technical track, I understand what they were trying to achieve. So it was, I'm really blessed to have been invited to that, and everybody had, it really was, like I said, sponsored by Google, and they have their own motivations for wanting this open standard. But I'm proud of everybody in the industry for saying full stop before we get too much further. We want this to be seamless. Nobody should feel like if they go to one site or another, like that this stuff doesn't play. Just doesn't make any sense. So
you told me that Google is also planning to release the 3D commerce, like so a 3D object in the search. No? So you can look for a product and you can see the digital twin directly in the search, and then you click and you can buy it.
Yeah, I mean, Google, you know, is first mover. It's so many things. But like from a customer point of view, you could argue that search hasn't changed in 20 years. You know, the mechanism, like, well, I go and I enter something and then stuff comes up, it's text-based, there's little visuals, cool. No one could say that's not working. But, you know, we need to do perhaps something else. And the fact that we can do it, Google is in a perfect position to say, okay, we're going to provide this experience for customers. And of course it translates, right? When, you know, that's organic search. And when you're on these websites and as a customer and you search, those results pages have the same job to do. But yeah, Google is an innovator in this space, and it's exciting to see what it is that they're proposing. And of course, this open standard means anybody that wants to participate can, right? So it starts with those search results. No matter where you are on what device and where you are in the world, those search results, when they come up, need to be just seamless, and whatever's going on in the background is invisible. So.
Yes, Yes, of course. I always say that also the e-commerce experience is very similar to the first e-commerce experience in the 90s. So you have your product with pictures and the product sheet, and we are not changing. Of course, there are a lot of implementation of new AI recommendation system, but the way you see the product is always the same. So what do you think about also the benefit for the consumer to have a 3D object in an e-commerce website? Are you agree with the numbers that we showed before?
Yeah, so I think it's really important. So I'm just going to speak for myself. I always check myself and say, like, look, like you think what you're doing is really important, but is it going to mean something for people? And commerce is a transactional relationship, and I think loyalty programs were one of the first proof points of, all right, if I'm going to buy something, what are you going to give me for buying from you? And so what I try to think about every day is, how do we make this 3D object a benefit? Sort of like, if you shop with us, we're going to give you this advantage. Because I think I talked to you about this. I'm very, very sensitive to, like you said, we taught people how to shop online. We all taught them how to do that. So now, if we want them to do something different and have a new experience, we now have to teach them what it is that's going on. And I really think a lot about, is it entertainment or is it engagement? Is it leading to a purchase? Is it enhancing the brand experience, even if that moment they don't buy something? But I think all of us in this space, we have to be very careful that our enthusiasm on this side, when we're building stuff, oh my God, that's so cool, you can see all this, we have to think about, this thing is part of the transaction, and it's a benefit to shopping. So I do think that customers are going to find it, of course they'll find it fun, but if they don't get a usage out of it, it will end up being just something fun to show. And
just a gimmick.
Yeah, it's just a gimmick. And it's the faster that we can ramp up the digital twins, right? The more that people see them, the less it's going to appear like a gimmick. And again, there's a psychology, and I'm not in the department in which we communicate to customers about the benefits. But like I said, loyalty program for me is something I think about. All right, if I shop with you, that's a great benefit, and we've taught people what that means. So how do we position this as a very, practical benefit? Now that you're shopping here, that we show you this, we are respecting you as a customer and saying, we understand that you want to see more and be more in control. And reducing returns is huge, right? But like, we have to start with, well, why am I seeing this? Why am I seeing this? What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know what to do with it.
And you told me it must be democratic, no? So you told me,
that's the other
I don't
thing.
want to see a 3D object just for a Prada bag, but also for a chicken breast, you said.
Yeah, and that's our responsibility, and the perception internally as we create these is, I don't think we should start to create the cool club and the non-cool club. Like, if you're and it could be price point, or it could be the heft. And I was saying, and I've said this before, my grandpa owned grocery stores, and I learned a lot from him about how you organize products so that it makes sense to people, and so that they can make the right decision. And if we only make digital twins of the things that we think are cool that you can spin around, and to say, well, I don't know why you need a digital twin of a soda can. That's us putting our own stigma on things, and like, oh, it's not going to look as cool. Look, you watch people shop, they pick stuff up, they look at it. Otherwise, you would just throw everything in a bin and hope that they find the right thing. I don't think they would come back. So I think it's important. Every product deserves to play in this space. It doesn't matter what it is. And yeah, like, does my creative team want to make a model of a chicken breast? Well, I think it's my job to explain why that's a really fun thing to do and important, right? And every product deserves to be treated like this.
So you mentioned your team, and can you tell us, for example, what are the big issues that you had to face to enter this conversation with the 3D commerce and to adapt on the company view about this standard?
Well, I do think that it takes a lot of emotional intelligence and empathy to understand how you start to stand up this practice at Walmart, and also I think other places I've worked as well. Other places I worked, I ran the photo studio, so I understand all that operation, and I understand, it's so fun to be on set, and Walmart does beautiful photography. So number one, I cannot and could not come in to say this is going to replace photography. First of all, who would I to say that, and who are we as an industry to say that? It can't be our mission to say, oh, as opposed to a photograph. Because, by the way, if we do that, our mindset is going to continue to get in the way of the customer. If we teach the customer that, well, you won't even know it's 3D, but that's crazy, because we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. And so internally, I have to make sure that creative people, no matter what they do now, they have a role to play. Nobody gets left behind. So I spend a lot of time involving people in the process. My colleagues that create imagery and content in ways other than 3D, I want their expertise. Everybody has something to offer. And so the barriers, it depends on which team. So for creative people, of which I'm one of them, sometimes we can get a little bit insecure. So, want to make sure that it happens. You want to make sure that everybody understands that you're not coming in to replace anything. This is, keep it focused on the customer. This is a lever for them. And then remember in your own mind that you are also a customer. Sometimes when we have meetings, I tell everybody, take off your badge, because we can't think, take it off, because we're all customers here. So, but then on the other side, we also want to remove the idea that this is just entertainment. And I think, folks like yourself and people that are willing to share the success of this, that personally, that helps me, because I know that it is something that delights the customer in that transactional relationship. But I can't just say that. Many of the conversations I have with people other than creative, I don't even show visuals, because I don't want the focus to be on, ooh, I can't even tell. I mean, look, we've been looking at clothing on mannequins forever. If we really cared, is that a real person? Come on, like we forgetting that people have a tolerance. Not representing Walmart, I have a personal wonder. Maybe we should actually tell people this is a model, and then the delight becomes, wow, our only job is to avoid deception. I want it to be what it is you showed me when it shows up. So I often wonder, maybe we should just make it obvious, tell people this is a 3D model, get them excited about it. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm very worried that we've set the bar that this is photo real. Why are we doing that to ourselves? It just, down the road, we're gonna, I know I get off on a tangent here. But
I agree, and we are also seeing that consumer behavior are changing. The so-called metaverse is coming. So Facebook is talking a lot about this metaverse, but also games are changing. No, people is going to play Fortnite just to hang out, or you can buy the Gucci shoes on Roblox. So we are going to be used to the 3D, I think. So I agree with you. We don't have to.
I want to interject for a second, because you just made me think of something. I think we can look to games as proof that there's no reason that we have to hide the fact that this has been created. Exactly. I mean, like, I was around, I had one of the original Macs, and there were graphic-based games, and I still enjoyed them. So sorry, you just made me think about, again, we have to think about what are the habits that we have taught people, and that's important to always remember, because we can't just expect them to understand. Really, we can't expect that. So
yes,
sorry I interrupted.
No.
I get excited.
yes. So I was talking about the metaverse, so which is a kind of future. What we envision in Invrsion is a present where e-commerce websites will move very quickly to this 3D commerce open standard. But this could be my last question. So how long do you think that it will take to be a real standard within the e-commerce websites, and then maybe in the future also in the upcoming AR, VR new worlds that are coming? But I think that they will take other 3-5 years.
Yeah. Well,
what's your feeling? What's your feeling?
Yeah, my
about,
feeling, right, is
about the e-commerce and seeing everything in 3D.
Yeah, well, because this is what I do for a living, you know, I hope that like it's soon and just like exploding. No,
you have your bias.
I'm biased, right? But you know, customers are going to tell us, and there's this really weird thing that's going to happen. It's starting to, and this is why it's important for things to be democratic, what gets modeled, because as we kind of try things and watch that it's reducing returns and selling products, and actually, you know, making brands stronger because you're playing in this space. But we're going to soon find out, like it might soon be this horribly obvious that products that don't give people this experience are going to start to have an image placed on them where they're not as valuable. So we have to be really careful in how we're, you know, feeding this. It's a terrible word, but because customers are going to start to want it more, and we're just gonna have to rely on what we see to their behavior. You know, all of us in retail have tried all kinds of different things in different categories to get more customers, and the ones that don't work, you know, we don't keep doing them. So I think as long as we remember that this has to be a piece of value for the customer, not just a cool thing. It is really cool. People love special effects. I mean, if they didn't, then you know, we'd be. Look, I love the original Star Wars, but we have to agree we've gotten better. Yes. But I think people really enjoy being delighted in this way. So we're responsible for continuing to give them this. We just have to pay attention to how they're using it, and that are they using it as a tool that's useful. And I think what you guys do is so important because, you know, I saw you pull the spaghetti off the spaghetti sauce off the shelf. You know, that's important. You know, I don't see people going down the aisle just like blindly throwing things in their cart. So this is what I mean, like, everything has to get this treatment, and it's up to us to design the shopping experience as shoppers. We cannot forget that when we leave work, this is us, right? So
totally
I don't know if that's the answer, but
no, I totally agree. As Katharina said in the introduction, we are envisioning this shifting from an omni-channel point of view to an omni-experience point of view, which is the future of the retailing, generally speaking, not just about the 3D commerce. And in Invrsion, we believe that virtual reality, augmented reality, and 3D in general is a new way to bring more experience into the retail. So this is the goal of our company and our journey. So I agree with you. So I thank you very much for your time, for your passion, for what you are doing. So we are doing within Kronos. So we are very excited to be member of this group. We are working hard to understand how to move to the scalability of all these ideas. We are eager to know what Kronos is doing. I know that they are releasing the GLTF2. There is a lot of things that is coming out. So we are very excited. I don't know
the Kronos experts, right? Like they're like way smarter than I am. So that
no, I know.
I'm counting on them, and they've come through, right? They're awesome.
They are great. They are great. So I thank you very much to be here, and thank you, Katharina. I don't know if we have some questions. Maybe
I think there's one question that came up twice in different structures. So I thought I would ask that. It is really around the part about 3D products for e-commerce, where does the ownership, or where does the onus sit of creating them? Is it with the manufacturer or is it with the retailer? So there's that sort of catch-22 on, where do we start? And so simultaneously, we have a number of clients that are smaller than Walmart, and basically every other client. And they, there you actually, they don't, there's no 3D pipeline maybe even to speak of yet on the B2B or B2C side. So where do you start? So I guess I jumbled two questions really into one, but maybe whatever appeals to you in those questions, if you have a strong opinion.
I don't know if I have opinion. I've had the experience I've had over the last 3 years. It depends. Sometimes if they already have a model, they actually, maybe it's not in the open standard and they would like us to make the model. Certainly with brands that are internal, and all retailers have these private brands, that's a no-brainer because we own the value chain and we'll make it. So it's very much a partnership. It's like, if you don't have one, then here's what we would like you to give us in order to make one. And those things are getting much more varied, from CAD to like an iPhone photo somewhere out in the wild. So it's our merchants that work with suppliers. It's definitely a partnership, and nobody is demanding anything one way or another. And there isn't no two vendors are alike, suppliers. And so I think we're just helping one another. And, I can't speak for being a supplier, but perhaps it feels really good to know that this is a service. Now, Wayfair has been amazing they have, for their suppliers, they have very, very obvious specs. And so if you want models up on their site, they make it very easy for you to understand how to do it. And then I think like Walmart as well, if you don't want to do it or you can't do it or whatever, no problem. Like that's part of our process. It benefits us to make that digital twin. So there's just no one way that it's done right now. Yeah.
We're seeing that too. There's so many different approaches. There's one last question from Justin, and he says, it's I guess relevant also with your experience coming from the photo studio side. He says, what motivates marketers to invest in 3D models? Is this new budget or an expansion of the imagery budget?
Right. I mean, where budgets come from is, a whole nother discussion. But so there's a couple of motivations, and so my motivation at work is I work closely with the merchants, because I really believe that they should own their own content. They're on the hook for numbers, and creative teams have the luxury of like, we're not on the hook. So I consider them to be extremely important clients of mine internally. So the motivation for them is once they understand that when you have the flexibility, you can react in real time. And this is when you're creating content like the room behind me. I want them to understand that while the photo studio, amazing imagery, but if you feel that you're in a category that's high velocity, then you're going to want the control that comes with making this scene from 3D, so you can swap out things as they become whatever, not viable in whatever way, because that delights the customer and it improves the brand, which then feeds into the marketing organization for what makes a brand strong. And each brand has different pillars, but for us, reducing like customer trust. And if you step back as a customer, one of the motivations is, look, it's just really sad and disappointing when you inspire someone and then you can't buy what it is you're showing. That's just like the way, that's the way it's always been. So depending on which team, but I usually start with the merchants because I understand the pressure that they're under, and I want them to know that you don't have, if you have a collective of 100 things, let's say, you don't have to decide which one appears in the photo. Now we can do all of them, and your product detail page are enriched. So motivations lie different places, and I think photography or content creation is funded in many different ways. It just depends on the organization. So that's the way I approach it.
Well, Cynthia, thank you very, very much for your thoughtful and very eloquent description of where you are, where you're taking your team, some of Walmart's strategies, and where the industry is going. And we hope that, I think there are no more questions, and we will run over a couple minutes. So it's perfect time, I would say, to end here. The idea is that this is a series, and we will shortly be announcing the next date for our next one and our next guest. And I would love to, I'll type in our email, or maybe Annalisa, maybe you can type our email into the chat too, if anyone wants to provide feedback or even has more questions for Cynthia. I'm sure we can pass those on too.
Yeah, please reach out to me if you just want to talk or have questions. The more that we share information, the better this is going to get.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. And and all of your feedback, and thank you very much for joining today, and we wish all of you a good weekend, and
yes,
be in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.